Zara Jennings didn't mean to walk into a billionaire's life, she just wanted to catch the sunset without someone's elbow in her face. The Santa Monica Pier buzzed with tourists, laughter, and the golden glow of evening light stretching across the ocean. Zara had the day off from waitressing, and for once, she decided to spend it doing something for herself. Camera slung around her neck, she wandered through the crowd, snapping shots of street performers and cotton candy stands. It wasn't professional gear, but it made her feel like maybe she could be more than what her paycheck said she was. She stopped near the railing where the view was clearest. A man in a navy jacket stood alone, the Pacific behind him painting a perfect backdrop. He was tall, dark-haired, and way too polished to be local. He held his phone awkwardly, trying to get a selfie with the sunset. Zara moved closer, instinct kicking in. "Hey," she said with a friendly smile, "want me to take it for you?" The man looked up, surprised. His eyes, ice blue, sharp, and focused, met hers. "You'd really do that?" "Yeah, why not?" she shrugged, holding out her hand. "Camera's too good to waste on a bad angle." He handed over the phone without hesitation. "Make me look like I belong on the cover of something expensive." Zara grinned. "You're lucky I'm a pro at this." She stepped back, framed the shot, and snapped a few. "There. Now you look like you own the ocean." The man laughed, a deep, warm sound that made her chest tighten unexpectedly. "I mean, it's leased under someone else's name, but I'll take it." She handed back the phone. "You're welcome, mystery man." He looked at the screen, then back at her. "Do you always offer to make strangers look good, or am I just lucky?" "I only help the ones who look like they're about to drop their phones in the sea," she teased, turning to walk away. "Wait, what's your name?" he called out. She looked over her shoulder. "Zara, I'm Yaron," he said, moving toward her. "Yaron Zeller," she raised a brow. "Cool name. Sounds like you should have your own cologne line," he chuckled. "I'll keep that in mind." Zara figured that was it. Cute stranger, good smile, random interaction, but Yaron didn't walk away. He stood beside her, watching the waves crash under the pier. "You live around here?" he asked casually. "Yeah, about 3 blocks that way, above a bakery that smells like heaven and sounds like traffic." "You from LA originally?" "Nope, Colorado, moved here after college." "Thought I'd be a big-time photographer by now, but turns out rent's real and dreams don't pay it." There was no pity in Yaron's eyes, just interest. "You any good?" "Better than I get paid for. But that's how it goes, right?" He nodded, glancing at her camera. "Show me something you've taken." She hesitated. "What now?" "Yeah, let me see what you see." Something about how he said it made her stomach flutter. Zara flipped through her gallery, then held the screen out. Yaron took it gently, his expression growing serious as he scrolled. "These are incredible," he said after a moment. "You've got real talent." "Thanks, I needed to hear that today." He looked up. "Come have a drink with me." Zara blinked. "What?" "There's a place down the beach, quiet, great view. I'll buy you a drink, you can tell me more about your photos." "Deal?" She hesitated. He didn't seem like a creep, and maybe it was crazy, but she didn't want to walk away from this. "All right," she said, "but I'm ordering the expensive wine." He smiled. "Good, I own the vineyard." She laughed, assuming he was joking. He wasn't. The place he took her to wasn't just quiet, it was exclusive. Hidden behind a private gate with a valet and a view that overlooked the coastline like something out of a movie, Zara froze as they walked in. "This place is..." "Wow," Yaron leaned in. "You said expensive wine." "I don't do things halfway." She gave him a look. "What do you actually do?" He paused, then answered simply, "Investments, tech startups, real estate, mostly boring things with big numbers." "Big numbers like?" He tilted his head. "A few billion, give or take." She blinked. "Come again." "I told you I don't do things halfway." Zara stared at him. "You're serious." "I don't lie, I don't need to." He pulled out her chair like a gentleman. "Still want that wine?" She sat down slowly. "Only if you're okay drinking with someone who makes less than your car costs." Yaron smiled. "I'm drinking with someone who made me smile today. That's worth more than you think." Her cheeks heated. She looked away, trying to hide the grin tugging at her lips. Dinner was easy, effortless even. Yaron wasn't stiff or arrogant. He made her laugh, asked real questions, and actually listened. When the waiter brought dessert, he ordered 2 of everything, just to see which ones she'd like. "I can't believe this is your life," she said, sipping her wine as the ocean glowed silver in the moonlight. "I can't believe you're real," he replied. "You walked up like it was nothing, handed me this ridiculous moment I didn't know I needed." Zara looked at him, her heart thudding. "You're not what I expected. Neither are you." He reached across the table, brushing his fingers against hers. "This is probably insane, but I don't want this to be the last time I see you." She didn't pull away. "It doesn't have to be." Yaron's eyes searched hers. "Then promise me something." "What?" "Tomorrow night, same place. Let me take you somewhere even better." She hesitated for only a second. "Okay, I promise." As he walked her home, they didn't talk about money or fame or what tomorrow might mean. He wrapped his jacket around her shoulders when the breeze picked up, and when they reached her door, he didn't try to kiss her, he just looked at her like she was already unforgettable. "Good night, Zara." "Good night, Yaron." And for the first time in a long time, she went to bed smiling. The following evening, Zara stood barefoot in front of her closet, staring at the scattered selection of clothes with an expression somewhere between panic and disbelief. Nothing she owned remotely resembled the kind of outfit one wore when being picked up by a billionaire. Especially not one with eyes like that and a voice that had echoed in her thoughts all day. She finally settled on a black wrap dress she hadn't worn since her cousin's engagement party, tugging it into shape and pairing it with a pair of heels she'd nearly forgotten she owned. Her hair fell in loose waves, slightly chaotic, but she decided not to fight it. There was no time for perfection. And maybe, just maybe, that was part of her charm. When the knock came, she didn't know what she expected. A car waiting at the curb, a driver holding a sign with her name. What she got was Yaron himself, standing at her door in a charcoal button-down and slate-gray slacks, holding a single deep red garden rose. "You answered the door," he said, handing it to her. "You knocked," she replied, taking the flower with a blink. "I thought you'd send a helicopter or something." "I thought about it," he said, eyes twinkling, "but I figured the roof of your building might have concerns." She laughed, tucking the rose into a glass on the counter before locking up behind her. "So where are we going?" "That," he said, offering his arm, "is a surprise." The car waiting outside wasn't flashy sleek, sure, but not ostentatious. He opened the door for her with an ease that made it feel like second nature, not performance. As they drove, the city lights blurred past, and she caught glimpses of him in the reflection of the window jaw set, fingers loosely curled on his thigh, watching her as if trying to memorize every reaction. "You always go this far for second dates?" she asked, breaking the silence. "I've never had a second date quite like this." "Because I took your picture." "Because you didn't ask for anything after," he said, turning toward her. "You didn't want anything from me." Zara frowned, confused. "Why would I? Most people expect something, a favor." A door opened. "You didn't." "I didn't know there was a door to ask for," she admitted. He chuckled. "Does that mean if you'd known you would have asked? Maybe for a ride to the grocery store," she teased. "Or a camera that doesn't freeze when I try to shoot at night." He tilted his head as if filing that away, then looked out the window. "We're here." The car pulled up to an unmarked gate nestled between 2 ivy-covered walls. A guard waved them through without a word, and the drive led into a private estate wrapped in trees and soft light. The house, if it could be called, that rose out of the hill like something from a modern fairy tale. Glass walls, open terraces, and a pool that shimmered under the stars. Zara swallowed. "You live here?" "No," he said easily. "This is my weekend place." She turned to him, but he was already rounding the car to open her door. He led her through the house without preamble. They passed a gallery of abstract paintings and a sunken lounge with a view of the coastline. Everything was quiet, intentional, almost reverent. On the back terrace, a private chef stood behind a white linen table, adjusting silverware under candlelight. "I wasn't sure what kind of food you liked," Yaron said, pulling out her chair. "So I had him prepare 3 options." She blinked. "3? I like to be thorough." Zara looked at the chef, whose expression remained politely unreadable, then back at Yaron. "You know this isn't normal, right?" He poured her wine, his movements unhurried. "I know. But I've never had anything about you feel normal." The meal was more than a dinner, it was an experience. They started with seared scallops and grilled peaches. Then came handmade pasta with shaved truffle, followed by lamb so tender it barely needed a knife. Zara tried to act like she wasn't completely overwhelmed, but when she tasted the dessert, some kind of salted caramel tart with a sugared crust, she actually closed her eyes. "You're going to ruin me," she murmured, fork poised mid-air. "Just dinner," he said softly, watching her. "Not everything has to come with strings." She paused, setting the fork down. "You say that like people assume it does, because they do. You don't talk about your past much," she said carefully. "Not that I'm prying." "I don't, because it tends to change things," he replied. "People hear my last name and suddenly I'm not a person anymore. I'm a resource." She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. "Okay, so what do you want to be?" He blinked, surprised by the question. "A person," he said finally. "Someone who can sit across from you and not be reduced to a headline or a bank account." Zara studied him. "Then take off your armor." He tilted his head. "Is that what you think all this is? You show me a house like this and expect me to believe it's not a wall?" she asked. "You're charming, sure, but you're also careful, measured, like you're always 3 steps ahead of everyone else." Yaron's jaw shifted. He looked down at his glass, then back at her. "You're not wrong, but I didn't bring you here to impress you. I brought you here because I didn't want to share you with the noise." Zara's throat tightened. "That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. I meant it." A breeze moved through the terrace, lifting the candle flames. Zara stood slowly and stepped to the edge of the balcony, resting her hands on the cool stone. The ocean spread out below like a secret waiting to be heard. Yaron joined her, close but not touching. "Ask me anything." She glanced at him. "Anything," he nodded. "What scares you?" The question hit harder than either of them expected. He looked out at the water for a long time. "Wasting time," he said finally. "Missing something real because I was too distracted by things that don't matter." Zara turned to face him. "What matters now?" He met her gaze. "Tonight, this." She didn't answer, she didn't need to. The silence between them settled into something intimate. Not heavy, not uncomfortable, just real. When they finally left, he didn't try to hold her hand, didn't kiss her. He just walked beside her, quiet and close, as if memorizing a rhythm neither of them had expected to find. And when he dropped her off at her door, he looked at her like the world had shifted. "Tomorrow?" he asked. Zara nodded. "Tomorrow." The third night started with rain. Not the soft, cinematic kind, but a full, crashing downpour that soaked the sidewalks and turned traffic into a slow, honking mess. Zara stood under the awning of her apartment, her umbrella useless against the sideways gusts, watching the headlights blur through the storm. She hadn't expected him to call, not that he ever had. Yaron didn't deal in small gestures, and yet, just as she was about to turn back upstairs, a sleek black SUV pulled to a stop in front of her building. The back window lowered just enough for her to see him inside, dry and composed, but with an expression that said he'd drive through a hurricane to keep his word. She slid into the seat, brushing water from her arms as the door clicked shut behind her. "You're punctual," she said, shaking out her damp sleeves. "I don't like waiting for things I want," he replied, eyes already on her. The car pulled away, tires slicing through the wet street. Zara leaned back, heart thudding in a rhythm she refused to acknowledge out loud. "I hope you weren't planning another outdoor dinner," she joked. "No," he said. "Tonight's different." She turned to him. "Different how?" Yaron didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the console and pulled out a long, slim envelope. He handed it to her without explanation. Zara opened it carefully. Inside was a printed itinerary, her name at the top and a boarding pass. "New York," she breathed. "Wait, tonight?" Yaron nodded. "There's a gallery opening tomorrow. I pulled a few strings to get your portfolio submitted." They loved it. Her fingers tightened around the envelope. "You submitted my work?" I told them I'd found someone with a rare eye, he said. The curator agreed. Zara stared at him, a dozen emotions crashing at once. That's not just a favor, that's huge. I didn't do it as a favor, Yaron said, his voice low. I did it because you deserve to be seen. But I didn't ask for, I know, he interrupted. That's why I did it. She looked down at the papers in her lap, suddenly unsure of everything and nothing at once. I don't have anything to wear to an opening like that, or the right shoes, or there's a stylist meeting us at the hotel, he said. She's handled events for people far more difficult than you. And what if I don't belong in that room? She whispered. Yaron leaned in, voice barely above the hum of the rain outside. Then none of them do either. They flew out 3 hours later on his private jet. Zara had never been on a plane where the flight attendant offered her lavender-scented towels and called her by name. She sank into a leather seat, trying to pretend her heart wasn't doing cartwheels. Across from her, Yaron dozed with his arms folded, head tilted slightly toward the window. In that moment, he didn't look like someone who dominated boardrooms or made headlines. He looked like a man letting his guard down just enough to let her see through a crack. By the time they arrived in Manhattan, the rain had followed them. But the moment the car pulled up to the hotel, Zara forgot the weather entirely. It wasn't just a hotel. It was a landmark. The doorman greeted Yaron like an old friend, and within minutes, they were escorted to the penthouse suite, 2 floors of glass, polished marble, and skyline views that didn't feel real. Zara stood in the middle of the living room, staring out at the Empire State Building. This is the kind of place people only see in movies. Yaron walked up behind her. I don't want you to ever look at something and think it's not for you. She turned. You keep saying things like that. I mean every one of them. He didn't try to touch her. He just stood there, watching her absorb the moment like it belonged to her all along. The stylist arrived 20 minutes later with racks of dresses, boxes of shoes, and a quiet confidence that made Zara instantly trust her. While they worked, Yaron disappeared into another room and didn't return until the gallery was only an hour away. When he did, he was in a midnight black suit with a lapel pin shaped like a falcon. His eyes locked on her, and for the first time, he seemed to forget how to speak. She wore a deep sapphire gown, backless, with a delicate silver chain resting between her shoulder blades. Her hair was pinned up, loose curls falling at the sides. The woman in the mirror looked like someone who had always belonged in a room full of art and champagne, and Zara didn't recognize her reflection. Yaron stepped forward. You don't look beautiful, her chest tightened. You look untouchable, she blinked. That's either a compliment or a warning. Maybe both, he said, offering his arm. The gallery was in a converted warehouse in Tribeca, all exposed brick and strategically placed lighting. Inside, voices echoed against tall ceilings, and the scent of perfume mingled with the sharp tang of wine. Zara's work had been printed larger than she'd ever seen it and hung at the far end of the main room. Her name printed neatly below each piece. People stood in clusters, reading descriptions, nodding, whispering. When they noticed her, the conversations shifted. A woman in a velvet blazer approached first, clearly someone important. You're the photographer, Zara nodded, heart in her throat. Your eye for contrast is exceptional, the woman said. You've captured something most people miss. Thank you, Zara said quietly. Yaron remained by her side, not saying a word, letting her have the moment. It wasn't until the curator pulled her aside and offered to feature her in a spring showcase that the reality of it hit. Zara stepped outside, breath fogging in the cold air, one hand pressed to her chest. Yaron followed a moment later. Too much, too fast, she admitted, but in the best way. He joined her, hands in his pockets. You're not the same woman I met on the pier. No, she said. But I think that woman's finally getting a chance to be who she always was. Yaron turned toward her, his expression unreadable. I need to tell you something, she tensed. Okay. My team found out someone from a rival firm was at the gallery tonight. They've been trying to buy my holdings in a company I'm taking public. I think they came to see why I've been distracted. Zara blinked. So, I'm the distraction? You're the reason I finally stopped running on autopilot, he said. And that makes you the one thing they can't manipulate. She stared at him, cold, forgotten. What are you saying? I'm saying the moment I met you, everything else stopped mattering as much, and that's dangerous for them, not for me. Zara looked away, her mind spinning. I don't know what any of this means. It means, he said, gently lifting her chin, that I came to the gallery for you, not for them, not for press, just you. The door behind them opened. A man in a suit stepped out, clearly looking for Yaron. I have to handle something inside, he said. Will you wait here? Zara nodded slowly. As he disappeared back into the room of polished voices and curated smiles, she stood alone under the awning, rain misting the sidewalk. Heart nodded with questions she hadn't known she'd have to ask. And for the first time since meeting him, she wasn't sure if she was ready for the answers. Zara stood beneath the gallery's stone awning, watching the streetlights glisten on the wet pavement. The weight of the night pressed in not just the opportunity that had unfolded in front of her, but the way Yaron had looked at her before disappearing behind that door. There had been something in his expression, a quiet urgency, like he was steeling himself for more than just a conversation. A gust of wind blew her hair into her face. She tucked it behind her ear, distracted by footsteps approaching from the side. It wasn't Yaron. A man in his early 40s, wearing a tailored coat and carrying a slim umbrella, stopped beside her. You're the photographer, he said without preamble. Zara didn't answer. I saw your work, he continued. It's braver than most of what's on those walls, unapologetic. She nodded once, unsure what to say. I used to work with Yaron, the man added, before he stopped trusting me. Her attention locked on him instantly. Why are you telling me that? Because you're the reason he's vulnerable right now. Her stomach dropped. Excuse me? Your name isn't in any of his files, no background check, not even a mention to his legal team. That's not like him. Zara crossed her arms. If you're trying to intimidate me, you're wasting your time. I'm trying to warn you. He stepped closer, voice low. Men like Yaron don't get to have soft places, they can't afford it, and when they try. He paused. The people around them get hurt. Before she could respond, he turned and disappeared into the night, his footsteps vanishing into the hiss of tires on wet asphalt. When the gallery door opened again, her heart jumped, but this time it was Yaron. Sorry, he said, tension lining his shoulders. They wanted to talk numbers. I told them I had other priorities. She searched his face. Your world doesn't feel real, he looked at her carefully. It doesn't feel real to me sometimes either. Someone just came out here, she said quietly. He said you used to trust him. Yaron's jaw tensed. Let me guess, gray coat, polished voice, walks like he's still in charge of something. Zara nodded. Elliot Price, Yaron said. He was my father's lawyer, stayed on after the estate passed to me. I cut ties with him 2 years ago when I caught him leaking deal information to rival firms. He said I make you vulnerable. Yaron didn't flinch. He's right. Zara exhaled slowly. Then why let me in? Because I've spent years surrounded by people who know what I am, not who I am, he said. And then you walked up to me with that camera and didn't blink twice. That doesn't mean I know everything about you. No, he said, but you trust your instincts and I trust mine. She stepped toward him, voice lower. Do you trust them enough to be honest with me? Yaron didn't hesitate. I've been honest with you since the moment I told you my name. Then tell me what you want from this. He looked down for a moment, then back at her. I want to build something that doesn't fall apart the moment someone else gets involved. I want to give you the space to grow, not just stand still under my shadow. I want to wake up and not have to calculate the cost of every decision. And I want to do all of that with you. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Zara's voice softened. Do you actually think we could work? We're from 2 different planets. I think we've both spent our lives trying to prove we belong somewhere, he said. Maybe we stopped trying to fit into places that never deserved us. She didn't reply. Instead, she reached for his hand. He laced his fingers through hers without hesitation. They left the gallery quietly, walking through the fading rain. No driver this time, just the two of them, side by side, beneath the city that had swallowed so many dreams and now, maybe, was offering them a new one. In the hotel suite, the stylist's racks were gone. The lights had been dimmed, the curtains drawn back to reveal a skyline that looked like it had been painted just for them. Zara stood at the window, heels off, hair loose again. "I don't want this to be a story that ends with a plane ride home and a thank you note." Yaron came up behind her, his hands resting gently on her arms. "It won't be." "How do you know?" "Because I've already changed things to make sure it isn't." She turned. "What does that mean?" He stepped back, reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim envelope. "This is a lease agreement for a studio space in LA, natural light, open floor plan, and it's under your name." Her heart stopped. "Yaron, it's not a gift," he said. "It's a start for a business. For your work, for you, I'll be investing as a partner, nothing more. You run it, you decide every shot, every submission, every step forward." She blinked, overwhelmed. "Why would you do that?" "Because I've never believed in anything more." Zara looked down at the paper in her hands. It was real, tangible, and more than that, it felt earned. "I'll accept it," she said, "under one condition." "Name it." "You don't step back, you don't pretend we're only business partners, you don't disappear the moment things get complicated." He met her gaze. "I won't." "I'm not going anywhere." She took a breath, then another, grounding herself in the moment. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too," he said, "but I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." She smiled finally, tears pressing behind her eyes. "You know you're going to have to deal with my landlord, right? And my insane neighbor who thinks I'm hiding a cat." "I'll buy the building," he said without missing a beat. "Problem solved," she laughed, and it felt like something inside her cracked open. He kissed her, then not rushed, not desperate, just certain. Like he'd been waiting for her to catch up to the truth he'd already known. The next morning they returned to Los Angeles together. Weeks passed. The studio opened. Her photos were featured in 2 more galleries. She hired a small team. Yaron kept his promise, never hovering, but always holding space for her to rise. They didn't live in the same apartment, but he was always there in the morning, holding her coffee, taking her calls between meetings, listening to her rants about lighting equipment and flaky suppliers. He never once tried to fix it, he just showed up. And one quiet Sunday, as they walked along the same pier where it all began, he stopped near the railing where the sunset hit just right. He glanced at the horizon. "You offered to take a stranger's photo," she smiled. "And you offered me everything I didn't know I needed." He pulled something from his coat, a velvet box. Zara froze. "I'm not asking for forever yet," he said. "I just want you to wear this as proof that sometimes the right moment finds you when you least expect it." She opened the box. A delicate bracelet, silver, with a small lens charm at the center. "I love you," he said simply. She reached for his hand, eyes full. "Then I guess it's a good thing I never walk away from a good shot." And this time, as the waves crashed below and the sky burned gold, he kissed her like the whole world had finally clicked into place. Zara adjusted the lighting umbrella, stepping back to check the frame again. The shot was almost perfect. The model's hair caught the late afternoon sunlight pouring through the window just enough to create the contrast she loved. She gave a subtle nod, then clicked the shutter once, twice, 3 times. Then she lowered the camera and exhaled. "All right," she said. "That's it for today." The model smiled and stepped away from the backdrop while Zara's assistant rolled over with a bottle of water and started breaking down the softboxes. The studio buzzed with quiet energy, papers rustling, cords being coiled, the scent of espresso lingering from earlier that morning. Zara walked toward the glass doors facing the courtyard, stretching her arms behind her as she glanced at the clock. 6:15. He was late by 15 minutes, which for Yaron was practically unheard of. She was debating texting him when the door opened. Yaron stepped inside, shrugging out of his jacket with one arm while holding a narrow white box in the other. His tie was loosened, and the sleeves of his shirt were rolled up, his usual precision slightly undone in a way that made her pulse skip. "Sorry," he said. "Board meeting ran long." The kind where everyone thinks they're the smartest in the room and no one's actually listening. Zara walked over, brushing her fingers down his forearm. "You're forgiven, but only if that box has something edible in it," he grinned. "Better." "It's from that place in Milan you mentioned 6 months ago, the one with the almond tarts." She blinked. "You had those flown in." "I was already negotiating a licensing deal with the owner. I just added a favor to the contract." Zara took the box and opened it carefully. Inside, 4 delicate pastries nestled in gold foil, still dusted with powdered sugar. She picked one up, took a bite, and closed her eyes. "Okay," she said, "you're officially impossible to top." He leaned against her desk. "You say that like it's a bad thing." She wiped her fingers on a napkin and looked up at him. "It's not, it's just, you keep doing these things I wouldn't even imagine asking for. I'm not trying to overwhelm you." "I know," she said. "That's what makes it worse. You do it without trying, and it still feels like the ground's shifting under me." He was quiet for a moment, then crossed the room and picked up a portfolio from the shelf. "I know what shifting ground feels like. I grew up watching people change the rules every time I thought I understood them." "I don't want that for us." Zara stepped closer. "Then what do you want?" He looked up from the portfolio, his voice calm but certain. "I want to build something that never makes you doubt your place in it." She reached for his hand. "Then let's stop waiting." Yaron's brow lifted. "Waiting for what?" She smiled, a slow warmth blooming in her chest. "For it to feel safe enough, for the right time, for some sign." He studied her for a beat before realization softened his expression. "You're serious." "I am," she said. "I love you. I don't want a moment of this to feel like we're hesitating." He pulled her into his arms, his breath warm against her temple. "Then marry me." Zara blinked. "Is that your way of proposing?" "No," he said. "That was me agreeing. This is me proposing." He opened the drawer behind him and pulled out a small velvet box, not the same one from before. This one was different, smaller, almost understated. Inside, a ring with a single oval diamond set into a thin band of brushed gold. Elegant, timeless, her. "I had this made in Paris," he said. "I've been carrying it for the last 2 months, waiting for the moment you stopped worrying about whether or not you belonged." Zara stared at it, heart thudding. "I belong with you. Then say yes." "Yes," she breathed, tears springing to her eyes. Yes. They didn't wait. Not because they wanted to escape tradition, but because they didn't need it. The ceremony was held 3 weeks later on a rooftop in Venice overlooking the Grand Canal at sunset. Only 20 people who mattered. Her mother, who cried through most of the vows. His sister, who flew in from Zurich and toasted them with a speech that made Zara laugh so hard she forgot her nerves. No press. No cameras beyond the one she'd handed to her assistant with strict instructions not to stage anything. There were no fireworks. No orchestrated string quartet. Just the hum of gondolas in the distance, the glow of lanterns overhead, and Yaron's voice as he whispered his vows in her ear, low and steady, promising never to let her forget her own brilliance. Afterward, they walked barefoot across the rooftop, dancing to a playlist Zara had made years ago, long before she'd ever imagined moments like this were real. Yaron twirled her once, then held her close, his lips brushing her forehead as the city shimmered beneath them. Months passed. The studio expanded. Zara hired 2 more photographers and launched her first exhibition abroad. Yaron kept his promise to let her lead, even when her success drew media attention. He never once stepped into the spotlight, always letting her shine, always quietly supporting from just outside the frame. One evening, she came home to find the lights dimmed and the scent of orange blossom in the air. A note waited on the table, upstairs. She climbed the staircase in bare feet, heart fluttering. In the bedroom, candles lined the windowsill and Yaron stood beside the bed, holding a small gift wrapped in cream paper. She opened it slowly. Inside was a black leather-bound book. On the cover, embossed in gold, were the words, "The moments that made us." She turned the first page, a photo of the pier, her camera in her hands, him half out of frame, smiling. She turned the next page, a shot of her first gallery wall, her name beneath the image, and then another. The terrace dinner, the rooftop in Venice. Her laughing in the rain, soaked and radiant, she looked up at Yaron, tears stinging her eyes. "You've been keeping this?" "I've been collecting proof," he said. "Proof of what?" "That every time I thought I was falling in love with you, I was right." She closed the book and pressed it to her chest. "I want 100 more pages," she whispered. He pulled her close, his voice rough. "Then let's start writing them," and they did, not perfectly. Not without mistakes or tired days or missed flights, but with honesty, with purpose. With a love that never asked her to shrink to fit and a man who never needed to stand taller than the woman beside him, they lived in the pages they created, together. Always.